Hi, I'm Heidi Shorts. Welcome to another creative lettering art lesson. In the story of God's special surprise, we saw how the faith of Moses' mother saved him in a surprising way. She had faith that God would take care of her baby boy, which he did. And when he grew to be a man, God used Moses in more surprising ways, and he was able to challenge the faith of God's people as he led them out of Egypt toward the promised land. Now, during the time when God's people were in Egypt, and also during the time of ancient Greece and Rome, there was a lot of construction being done. A lot of buildings were being built. Temples and palaces and monuments, and many of them were created out of stone. Now, oftentimes, the artisans or the workers would chisel messages, words into that stone for us to find even today. They've lasted all these years. If something was painted on the stone, eventually it would wear over time, but things that are chiseled into stone are much more permanent. And I want to show you some tools to help you get a little bit of a picture of what I'm talking about. I actually have a chisel and I have a mallet. Now, a chisel is a tool that has a handle on one end, and on the other end we have an angled point on the other end. The handle would be firmly grasped in your hand, and the pointed end would be placed against the stone. Now, the mallet or the hammer is really heavy, and this tool would be used with the other hand, and a worker would tap the handle end so that it pushes the chisel into the stone, and it kind of digs out that stone. Little pieces of stone would fly out of the stone and would leave an impression or an engraved message that would be somewhat permanent. Now, we're not going to be using a chisel and a mallet today. We're going to be using our regular tools, and I want to show you what we're going to use for this lesson so that we can create some letters that look like they've been around for a really, really long time. So what we're going to need today is some regular paper, some plain white paper. Something from your computer printer would work just fine. We also need number 2 pencil, the kind of pencil you use at school or have at home. We'll probably need at some point a pencil sharpener, a good white eraser to help you make your corrections and adjustments as you're drawing and as you're writing. You'll need a good ruler. We're also going to be needing some colored pencils. We don't really care what kind, what brand, doesn't really matter for this lesson, but a nice assortment of colors is always good for our lettering lessons. We'll also need our extreme colors. We'll be using those as well, and those will give us our surprise at the end of our lesson. And in order to see that, we'll be using our black light. And again, if you don't have one, you can get one at seethelightshine.com. Okay, we're ready to get started. You'll use your plain white paper to start, your number 2 pencil, and your ruler. I have my bigger sheet up here for you to be able to see. I'm going to take my ruler, and because I want you to see this at home, instead of me using a number 2 pencil, I'm going to use a darker pencil, even though I want you to use your light guidelines with your number 2 pencil. And we are going to lay your pencil across your paper, and we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to lay it near the bottom. We're going to trace lightly across the top, lightly across the bottom, and that gives you 2 parallel lines. Now, from here we're going to build a lot more lines, and so we're going to take your ruler, lay it across the top one, trace across, scoot up on top of the one you just made, trace again, scoot on top of that one, trace again, and one more. Normally we wouldn't do so many lines, but today we are completing a complete alphabet. As you can see, I've now made 6 lines. My top one is not perfect, not a problem. Okay. We're going to be creating a complete alphabet, and because we want it to look like it's chiseled from stone, all of our strokes, all of the lines that make up our letters will be straight. using these tools, it's very difficult, and it's hard to turn corners. It's hard to make curved places in letters like you normally would if you're using a pencil. And so in order to mimic the look of a chiseled piece of art, we're going to use our pencils and continue to use those straight lines. So we're going to start with A, we're going to work our way through to Z, and you'll be surprised at how quickly we can do this and how easy they are for you to do. Now remember, I'm using a darker pencil for you to see at home. If you lightly use your number 2 pencil, that would work out really well because you're going to be adding color later on. So let's take a look. Let's go to the beginning of our alphabet and we're going to create a capital A. Basically, we're starting up at the top. We're creating an angle that goes down to the left, back to the top, an angle that comes down to the right. Looks just like what you're used to doing so far. And then instead of making our crossbar straight across the middle, we're going to make it angled. It gives a whole different feel to our alphabet when it's all put together, and you'll see what I mean as we go along. We're going to scoot over a little ways, and we're going to create a capital B. We start out like our normal capital B, but remember, instead of these 2 bumps, which we would normally add, we can't do that. We're using a chisel, or we are imagining that we're using a chisel. And so what we're going to do is make 4 short lines. This one comes across to the right, then back to the middle. From that point, back to the right, and then back to the bottom of our letter. Our capital C. Now normally a C is round, but again we have straight sides. Back and then forward. You can see that we're starting to come along nicely. I hope that you're enjoying this as we get started, that this is not too difficult for you, and I'm sure you're doing a great job. We're going to skip over to the D, straight line down. And then the same kind of strokes that we did on our B, only a little bit larger. To the right and then back to our straight line. Okay, I'm going to continue by doing an E. Looks like our C, doesn't it? But then we're going to go back across the middle and put a straight line. Now I've run out of lines here. I did not make my lines long enough. So I can just use my imagination and I can continue as if there was a line there, or if you feel more comfortable, you can stop your video and you can take your ruler and you can continue across if it's helpful to have the line underneath your letters in order for you to create these. Okay? So I'm going to take my E now and jump over, and my last letter on this line is going to be an F. Straight line to start, angled line for the top, and then straight line in the middle to give me the feel of the letter F. So already you can see how these are coming together. I'm going to skip to my second line, and I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue my line underneath my F because I feel more comfortable using a line underneath my letters. I don't know about you, but it works well for me. Okay? Let's skip on over, and we're now going to do a capital G. As you've noticed, all these letters are capitals. A G, also a normally rounded letter, but we are using straight strokes because they're chiseled. Okay, we come over to the H. H is a lot like when we made the A. Instead of making the crossbar straight, we're going to make it angled. And you can see that it's the same angle as the A. Now here's the easiest one in the whole alphabet, the I. There you go. Didn't take much, did it? Okay, J, straight down, angle to the left. K, this is one of those letters that looks just like what you normally would make if you were writing your capital letters. Okay, and L, straight down, and an angled line at the end. Our next line, I'm going to go ahead and continue with my ruler so that I have room for my letters. Let's go to M. M looks just like a regular capital M because it's got straight sides, easy for us to do. Next letter, capital N. Same thing as before, looks just like a regular capital. Now the O. This one's kind of fun. It looks more like a diamond, really, than it looks like an O. We are making 4 sides that are angled Okay, looks like a diamond, but it's actually an O. Our P, straight down, and it looks like the top of a capital B, off to the right side, back to the middle. Now our Q is going to look a lot like our O. We're going to start with a diamond, and then we're going to give it this long straight tail, okay? And the last letter is an R on this line. It will look like our P, and a little leg that sticks out to the right-hand side. So you've got 3 rows. You're doing a great job on these. I'm going to continue this line here. And we're going to start with our S. An S is also a curved letter that can be a little bit tricky, but we're making straight lines. 3 straight lines together make our S look ancient. We have an angled line for the top of our T with a straight base. Our U has 2 straight sides with a slightly angled side across the bottom. And now here comes the easy part. V, W, X look just like you would expect them to. Long straight lines that are angled meet at the bottom and at the top, and X across the middle. And our last line, and then you'll be able to take a breath. Our Y looks very similar to what you're used to. And then the Z is really tall and thin, but looks just like what you're used to as well. So you've now created a whole chiseled alphabet that looks like it has the feel that it's been around for a really long time. Now, I'm going to give you an opportunity to go ahead and stop your video, and let's go over each of those letters with color. Now, it's up to you. You can choose any colors that you like. I would love, though, for you to choose something from your extreme colors. They can be all different, they can be all the same, it's up to you. But have some fun, take a couple minutes, go over each of your letters, and then join me again as we do a little bit more with these letters. Okay. As you can see, all of my letters are different. I had fun mixing it up a little bit. And now we're going to take those letters, because by themselves, it's just an alphabet, and we want to spell something. It's much more fun if we can take them and make something from them. Now here you've got a lot of space left over at the bottom, so you have a great opportunity to write a word that you like. It can be your name. It can be something special to you. Because I'm thinking about the story that we've just read, I'm going to be writing the word surprise. That's the one that I think would be a fun one to write, and I've got plenty of room to do that. And I'm going to use a regular violet pencil from my regular colored pencils so that you can see it, and you'll see later how I add some extreme colors to that to make it come alive. So I'm going to create the word surprise. You, after watching me, may turn your video off and write whatever word you'd like. Just make sure that it fits within this space. Okay, now that you have your word in place, looks pretty good, doesn't it? It's kind of fun to do something a little different than what you're used to. But you know what? We're going to take it to the next level. It's fine the way it is. We want it to look like it's cold, hard stone. We want it to look like it's been around for a really long time. So we're going to add a few more details, and I think you'll really like what it looks like. I'd like you to go ahead and take your number 2 pencil, because you want to create nice light guidelines that you'll be able to erase. I'm going to continue to use my violet pencil just so that you can see it. We're going to create a rectangle, or kind of like a box, around the word surprise, or whatever word you've chosen to write. And if your sides are not perfectly straight, it's really okay. That's what makes it look old. Okay? First step. Next thing, we're going to go along the top edge and the bottom edge of this rectangle, and we're going to put a couple little random V shapes. I'm going to put one here, I'm going to put one here and one here, and I think I'll put a couple upside down V's down here at the bottom. Now what happens when you put these shapes along the top and the bottom, it looks like your stone has weathered over time. The edges have worn off and it looks really old. Okay? You can see how already it's starting to look really stone-like. Now I'm going to add one more element before we start to add some color. At the time when these buildings were being constructed, often the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, would also add pillars or columns to their buildings. And we're going to do the same thing. On the left-hand side, we're going to create a long, skinny rectangle. And on the side over here to the right, another long, skinny rectangle. And then those columns have supports on the top and the bottom. There we go, slightly spread out. If you were an Egyptian, you might decorate this pillar or this column with hieroglyphics, with painted images of people or plant life. If you were a Greek or a Roman, those columns would probably be fluted or have ridges along them. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just, for the sake of a simple, effective tool in making these look old, I'm going to make long, straight lines to make them look like old columns. Looks pretty cool, don't you think? Now let's add some color. Let's make it look like it's stone. I'm going to take my violet pencil and I'm just going to lightly shade my columns. And I think I'm going to switch for just a minute to my extreme colors. Now the only one in this box that really looks stone-like is our absolute zero, and that's the blue pencil in our box. And we're going to take this and let's go along the sides of the word that you've created in your box. We really want this word to stand out. If it's your name, if it's something special and meaningful to you, we want that to be highlighted. Because remember, the whole point of creative lettering is to have your words interesting to read, easy to read, and everything else around it helps us understand the meaning of the word better or helps us enjoy it more. Okay, so you can see how I'm making kind of thick lines over each of the strokes of my letters. Okay, now I'm going to go back with my violet. You can also use gray. You can use light black to make it look like stone. And remember, these little cutouts, you don't need to put color inside them because that's where your stone has worn away. And when you're putting some light color around your letters, make sure that you don't run over your letters because you want those colors to be nice and sharp. Okay, and as you can see, I'm not filling in all my spaces. This is stone that is old. And it actually has more than one shade in it. I'm going to come on over to my regular pencils. I'm going to take a black. I'm going to lightly add a little of that. Stone often has a lot of variation in it, so not all one color. Want to make sure you go inside your letters as well. Okay, and you know what, you may even want to take more time than what I'm doing, so you may turn off your video to do your best work. Now the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my absolute zero, I'm going to go back to this blue from my extreme colors, and I'm going to lightly go over the complete surface. When you think of stone, when you think of rocks, there are so many different tones, so many different colors. There could also be browns. And let's see if I'm getting my whole surface covered. Okay, I want to make sure I go up to the edges. You can see how your word is really coming to life. I bet it looks fabulous. I think we've got it. Okay, so now's the time when we get to really see our surprise. We get to turn out our lights. It's time for you to pick up your black light and see how your letters look. Now that you have all the skills to chisel the complete alphabet, can you imagine how much fun it will be as you learn the Word of God to practice Bible verses by writing them all out and posting them on your wall, maybe somewhere in your bedroom where you can read them and see them and be reminded each day? It's a great way for you to take God's Word, to chisel it into your heart and have it become part of your life that is permanent and lasting. I hope you've had fun with this lesson today. I've enjoyed working with you, and I look forward to you joining me again for another Creative Lettering Art lesson.